The Arizona Hemophilia Association started in 1967 and has been around for over 40 years. It provides families with chronic bleeding disorders to have a place to get assistance, to provide education for those who are really struggling to learn how to cope with a chronic bleeding disorder. Today we're here at Camp Honor. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary of Camp Honor. It allows kids to get to come to an environment where they get to just be kids. But they also learn how to manage their bleeding disorder. They also build friendships that last a lifetime and really grow up to be comfortable in managing their own bleeding disorder.
Here at Camp, children, campers, and staff, we're all free to talk about our bleeding disorders and to talk about our diagnosis. Whereas some of us feel that we have to keep that a secret. At camp, we're allowed to talk about what our bleeding disorder is and how it affects us on a daily basis.
Before Camp Honor started, kids in Arizona didn't have a summer camp, so they were sent to the camp in Colorado.
In fact, I went with them to Colorado, me and the nurse. We flew up there and took about 6 kids, and we decided in Arizona we wanted to have our own summer camp.
And then in '93, there was a movement in our organization to get someone on board that had camp experience who could provide an Arizona-based camp for our kids with bleeding disorders.
Camp Honor was started 20 years ago. Mike Rosenthal, who was the executive director at that time, was the camp director.
In the late 70s and early 80s, the medication that we used comes from human plasma. And at the time, they were making this medication from basically thousands of donor pints of plasma, where they would combine all of these pints of plasma into a single vat. They were using hepatitis plasma, and they weren't discarding it. They were continuing to keep it in that plasma pool. And so, it was just a given that the medication was infected with hepatitis, and consequently, the medication was also infected with HIV. It affected over half the hemophilia population at the time. I got infected with HIV, my twin brother got infected with HIV. He passed away when we were 19, and I've still been healthy, and I was able to clear my hepatitis. But it's really devastated our community. At this point, out of the 10,000 that were infected, there's probably only just over 2,000 that are still with us.
This year, well, every year actually at camp, we like to recognize people who have attended our camp who have passed. And usually the people who have passed are those who have contracted HIV or AIDS through the bad blood. This year we did something really cool. We do the slime fight every year, and it's personally my favorite event. And all of the kids get geared up in these colored teams that they've been divided into, and we throw slime at each other, and we just get drenched in all of these colors. And then at the end, we brought them together, and we wanted them to remember the people that once stood on that same slime field. And we stood up in front of them, and we took off our slime shirts, and underneath it we had a white shirt, and it said, "I honor," with 24 different names across it. And we got to remind our kids who are so far removed from that. And for me, I'm not removed because I was a camper, and unfortunately a lot of my friends from camp were some of the people whose shirts are now hanging in front of our dining lodge. But our campers got a chance to be reminded that they're to camp harder than they ever have before, that they're to slime harder, run faster, swim longer, eat a little bit more, because of those who came before them and really had to make it the ultimate sacrifice in order for our kids now to have the safe medication that they have.
We used to have in the infirmary bigger shelves for the medications because the medications were bigger. Now everything is in much smaller vials, containers, and they don't have to pack their whole life in a huge suitcase. Now they can have a little cooler and it carries everything.
The kids that came to camp weren't all treated on a regular basis. They weren't treated prophylactically, so a lot of them had to come in and get treated for bleeds. So you really had to watch what they were doing. You paid a lot more attention to their activities. You saw more kids on crutches. You saw more kids limping. And you could definitely tell who had hemophilia.
Today, we only have 1 pair of crutches that I'm aware of on campus, and they're on the flagpole.
I have seen that the children are more mobile. There's less joint damage. And also there is a whole new generation of children who have never experienced a bleed because they have access to medicine on a weekly or a daily basis.
Now when you come to camp, you can't tell who has hemophilia and who doesn't.
So in 20 years, our community has really been through a lot. You know, we've endured the contaminated blood products, but those things, despite being very tragic, were actually catalysts for some very positive change in our community. You really see that in our quality of life, and you see that at Camp Honor.
So in the past 20 years, we have grown in numbers significantly because the families that send their kids to camp know that we can care for their medical needs and they can feel safe sending their kids to Camp Honor.
Even if there was a cure for hemophilia, I guarantee you these kids would still want to come to camp, and it would be Camp Honor, and it would be a camp for kids that used to have hemophilia, which would be the ultimate joy, so yeah.